Fabulous thing about America is that two women like yourselves, if you're really serious, you really read this Constitution and really look at it, you can have a major effect on this. It should not be in the Constitution. It makes a joke of our process. And two people like yourselves, if you really marry up with the idea and work at it hard enough, get a congressman to go to the Congress and ask them to put a constitutional amendment in to take this language out of the Constitution, you might get it done.
It's about time.
All right, we're going to take a little bit of a departure. Hi, I'm Cynthia.
Hi, I'm Cece.
And we're going to get a little bit serious for a change.
Yeah.
So we're here talking to our Fire Pit Friday group and our Girls on Fire group. And Cece and I, we went to Los Angeles and several other places to film our show. And we started asking women and men about women's right to vote.
And you know, Cynthia, I found that very, very interesting that a lot of women really didn't know exactly when they got the right to vote. So what did we do? We decided to go ahead and start asking some people, but then also research.
Yeah, and that's where we got the surprise of our lives, because apparently
we always had the right to vote.
Yeah, and we have misinterpreted the Constitution. So we thought we would come and find someone who could set us straight, someone who's kind of made it his life's mission to interpret the Constitution the way it was written.
Now, who would that be? Mr. JohnJayHooker is here with us on Fire Pit Friday. What an honor.
Yay!
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
I'm delighted to be here.
We're so excited.
Two pretty girls. Well, how can
There
I be
you go.
doing
Hey,
that,
it's already, that's it, that's a wrap. Well, first we should say that here in Tennessee, you're an attorney, an entrepreneur, and let's see, I read perennial candidate and political gadfly.
And he's been in the movies.
Yep, which is a nice way to say you're a pain in the neck, but in a good way.
Well, I don't know
like
if it's a
that.
good way. They really resent it. I mean, the establishment doesn't like you challenging them.
Well, you're shaking the tree, and nobody wants
I
the
mean,
tree
you shake
shaken.
the tree, they don't like it so much.
Yeah.
But
So,
we really like it.
I'm
Yeah.
happy to be a gadfly, but it's not the most popular thing you
That's
do.
all right now. Well, we've been called a few things similar, but that's okay.
That's all right. That's taking responsibility.
There you go.
And knowing, what you believe in.
And not being afraid to stand up and be heard,
That's the part.
even if people want to shut you up. And the squeaky wheel really does get the grease.
It does.
I know.
So our
And
question to you, John Jay,
All right.
this is a very interesting thing, the 19th Amendment.
Yes.
We really did misread we misread the Constitution a long time ago as women. How did that happen, in your opinion? Now we've always had the right to vote.
Well, let me put it this way. The Constitution, which I dearly love, has some flaws that exist even today, to my astonishment. The Constitution was written in Philadelphia in 1787, and it was amended with the first 10 amendments a couple of years thereafter. So you're talking about that long before the Civil War in the 1860s. The notion that government was the instrument of all the people, and it's evidenced by the fact that the most famous document other than the Constitution is the Declaration of Independence, and starts out, "We the people."
Mm-hmm. And there's the rub.
There's the rub. The people that we the people really left out women and left out blacks. Mm-hmm. Now, in those days, the notion of women or blacks participating was put to the side, and there was not any major serious debate about that at that time. The Constitution still bears the scars of that circumstance. For example, this question has never been raised before the Supreme Court of the United States, and it is yet unresolved. And someday I'm going to get around to doing it. If I don't, somebody else should.
Tell us what it is,
Yes.
because this could be the
The
start of that.
Constitution provides, I'm going to read it out loud.
Okay.
And I'm going to give you girls each a copy of this.
That's great.
So that you can take it home. I want you both to read the Constitution and make it your friend. I'm a friend of the Constitution.
Well,
Let me read it, however, what it says, and there are some problems with it. It's sort of in my DNA. My great-great-great-grandfather was a man named William Blount, and he signed the Constitution of the United States. So he put his name on this very
He
language.
went on to become governor of
Yes,
the Tennessee
he
area. Is that-
went to Philadelphia. He was from North Carolina. He went to Philadelphia and became friendly with George Washington and signed the Constitution along with George Washington and the rest of them, 55 of them. And then he was appointed governor of all the land south of the Ohio River. So that's a big territory. But he was from North Carolina. And so when the time came, North Carolina was willing to give up some of its property. He became the president of the Constitutional Convention of Tennessee in 1796. And he could have been the first governor of Tennessee, but he elected not to be and became the first United States senator from Tennessee. And incidentally, Andrew Jackson became the first congressman from Tennessee. And at the same time, Andrew Jackson signed the Tennessee Constitution as well as William Blount. And so I've had that interest in both the federal Constitution and the state Constitution.
Okay.
Which is like here and here.
Different.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And now, when they did the federal Constitution, they used language that they intended to be precise. They knew it was a document that was going to control the lives of all these citizens. Incidentally, the most important thing I know about constitutional law was taught to me by my father. And my father was a great lawyer and well recognized as really being the best, certainly in this state, and one of the best in the country. And one time while I was going to Vanderbilt Law School, I asked him what a provision of the Constitution meant. And he said, "Ask your mother." And I said, "Papa, Mother, you perhaps have forgotten, is not a lawyer." He said, "That's the point." He says, "The Constitution was written by mostly non-lawyers, to be read by non-lawyers, to govern non-lawyers, and if your mother can't understand it, no lawyer can understand it."
Good point.
A very, very important point. And so when you read the Constitution, you don't have to bow down to some professor of law who may or may not have the right idea.
Exactly. And we had actually talked about that because we thought, there really was no old English language in it. It was
No.
just plain and simply
No
stated.
question.
See,
about
where was your father in 1777?
Yeah.
Because we really could have used
No
him.
question. Well, I'll just show you how interesting it really is. And I'm going to talk to you now about something that I have never heard anybody mention except myself.
Okay.
That's astonishing to me.
Okay.
Particularly when I read this language to you. And you'll have to wonder why this hadn't been a subject of great controversy for all these years. The Constitution says in Article 1, Paragraph 2, Section 2,
Okay.
"No person shall be a representative who shall not have attained the age of 25 years." Hard to misunderstand that, right?
Right.
No person
Right.
shall be a representative who has not attained the age of 25 years
Okay.
and been 7 years a citizen of the United States,
Right.
comma, and who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of the state.
Okay.
You with me? Didn't have to be an inhabitant before he was elected,
Right.
just an inhabitant when he was elected.
Okay.
And that also applies to the United States Senate.
Okay.
And that's how Bobby Kennedy, who lived in Massachusetts, was able to run for the United States Senate from New York, because you didn't have to be a resident until after the election.
Okay.
You follow me?
Yep.
I follow
At
you.
the time that you were elected.
Gotcha.
All right, now the next part of that sentence is, that says, "And who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of the state." You with me?
Yep.
Comma. These are the words that I cannot understand why this hadn't been talked about, argued about in law schools, why the courts haven't have dealt with this for a long time. Because the next few words are, "in which he shall be chosen." Doesn't say she
Or they.
or they
Why?
or he or she. It simply says, in which he shall be chosen. So right there in the Constitution, in the qualifications clause, it says no person, but anybody who's been to the 6th grade in school knows that if you read the English language and you got that part of the sentence that says no person, then you've got another part of the sentence in which it says, in which he shall be chosen, that modifies no person.
Exactly.
And therefore, it's obvious that the Constitution of the United States, till this very day, carries with it this statement. The same thing's true, that's for the House of Representatives. The same thing's true for the United States Senate. Now it says, with respect to the United States Senate, that no person shall be a senator who shall not have attained the age of 30 years instead of 25, and have been 9 years instead of 7, a citizen of the United States, and who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of the state for which he shall be chosen. Okay. Again, you have the word he. And so we have now ignored that circumstance. And we have all these members of the United States Congress, both in the House of Representatives and the United States Senate, who are females. But that's not what the Constitution says. Now, every other provision in the Constitution is amendable by a 2/3 vote. You can take anything, put it in, take it out by 2/3, with one exception.
Okay.
And that is with respect to to each state shall have 2 United States senators, and that cannot be removed from the Constitution without the unanimous consent of all the states.
Okay.
But I find that fascinating because at any point in time, anything can be amended. So depending on the state.
Part of the genius of the Constitution is that it is amendable.
Right.
On the other hand, it's not easily amendable, so that you just don't do it frivolously. It's got to be serious.
Okay, well that's good.
Case in point with the 19th Amendment.
Imagine in the time the country was born, and somebody wanted to run for president of the United States. It was actually totally impossible to campaign and go into all those states on a horse and buggy.
Right.
And they had no television, no radio, no Western Union, no telephone, so that if you let the people vote for president, they would have had to vote without any real knowledge of who they were voting for.
Understandable.
For example, I'm a big fan of Andrew Jackson's. He said that my favorite quote is, he said, "One man with courage can make a majority." And he was right about that. That can happen. It does happen in America. But Andrew Jackson, you see, he was around in the 1820s and all that. This historian writes that less than 1/10 of 1% had ever seen a man who had seen Andrew Jackson.
Wow.
Not 1/10 of 1% had seen Andrew Jackson. 1/10 ever seen a man who'd seen Andrew Jackson.
That's insane. That's crazy.
So that just puts it in focus of how removed these people were from self-government.
Wow.
The notion that the people are the sovereign, and that we have government of the people, by the people, for the people. All that self-government there was this technological disability, that there were no methods of transportation, no methods of communication that would give the people a fair chance. And so they deposited the power to elect the United States senators in the legislature, and the power to elect the president in the legislature, because there was no other way to do it in view of the fact that these candidates were virtually anonymous.
Right.
Okay.
George Washington was the exception,
right?
Because he was this great war hero. All right, now I'm going to read you something else.
Okay.
I've never heard anybody in my life. I went to Vanderbilt Law School. I never had any conversation with any lawyer who ever knew about this provision that I'm getting ready to read you.
All right.
And it's so obvious. Here's what it says. Talking about the President of the United States shall at all times receive for his services,
right,
a compensation which shall neither be increased nor diminished during the period for which he has been elected, and he shall not receive within the period any other emolument from the United States or any of them. Then the next paragraph 8, before he enters on the execution of his office, he shall take the following oath of affirmation. Quote, I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States, and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Now right here, with Hillary Clinton having run for president of the United States, nobody raised this question in the course of that campaign
Right.
in which she was involved, which is implicit in the proposition. It says, before he shall enter on the execution of the office, implying that only a man can be the president of the United States.
Well,
And here we are having a woman run for president, and in fact, Palin running for vice president. She
Right.
became the nominee,
Right.
and we ignored that this discrepancy in the Constitution, that there is, that it needs to be updated. That we need to amend the Constitution
Yes.
to say what we mean, and
Yes.
that is that either a man or a woman may be a United States congressman,
Well-
or senator, or be president of the United States. As long as we leave the word "he" in there, we have it mocks the Constitution. It says what it says,
But-
and that time meant what it meant. Now go ahead.
now the thing about it is, let's go back to the first day they wrote it. Okay, so we're back into the room again. We're back with everybody in the room, all of these men, and at this point they're thinking, well, their wives and their slaves. At that point, they're thinking property. You know. Now, if one of them would have said, honey, I'm going to do this absolutely fantastic thing today. All the guys after the cigar club, we're all meeting in the hall, and I want you to bake those special cookies because this is going to be the absolute biggest day in history, I swear. And I want you to be there. Now, do you think if that wife would have been in there that day while all the men were signing away, if they said out loud, we have something to read out loud and this is going to be our law, our Bible, this is what we believe, starting a new nation, do you think that woman would have said, I have a question about the he part?
Yeah. Well, you know,
Do you think she would?
Of course, it's hard to put ourselves back in those times.
Yeah,
I know.
We talked about having a time machine.
Could we do it? Could we do it? Because I would bake, I'll tell you what, John Jay, I would be that wife, and I would bake those cookies, and I'd bring them into the meeting.
I don't doubt if you were there, you would.
And I would have said, if you were there, I would say, John Jay, could we just have a little talk about the he?
Yeah.
See, because now we do know that a few, like John Adams' wife did say to him, you got to take care of the ladies. And his response to her was, what was it about the despotism of the petticoat? He wasn't going to deal with that.
Right, which I think was Abigail Adams.
Yeah.
They wrote
was really
letters.
a very progressive person.
Yes.
She was.
She got
She was a girl on
but
fire.
You see, all this, to put it in perspective, all this came down from England. This wasn't just some new idea by these men, these Caucasian people who. England had a form of government that had been in existence for hundreds of years, and these states had form of government that had been in existence for 100 years. So there was a lot of experience with democracy before the 1787 convention. It had been over there in Virginia since the early 1600s and around Connecticut even before that. So that America was not infantile. It had a form of government for a long time, and if you take the total years how many years Virginia had been in operation, how many years that Delaware had been in operation, how many years Connecticut had been in operation, and I added all those years up, there were more than 1,000 years of self-government before we ever took this step. And there was all this history of England. And so when it came to Philadelphia, it wasn't a new day. It was an old concept that women were and slaves were not to vote.
Right.
And they conducted themselves in that way, and they bore this. The fascinating thing is that we have been so callous as not to read the Constitution.
And you are right.
The 14th Amendment was brought about after the Civil War. And let's talk about the 14th Amendment for a minute, because you want to get it right.
Yes.
Yeah, we want to get it right.
Yes.
The first almost magical thing about the 14th Amendment was that if you go back and you read the debate, it's very hard to come to the conclusion that they really considered this in a deliberative way. There was some conversation about this, but was not spelled out in any great detail. And that was that the 14th Amendment would incorporate the first 10 amendments. So that
Okay.
everything that was applied to the federal government. What are the first 10 amendments? They are the restraint on government. You see, there are two aspects to the Constitution. One, it is to give the government the power to protect you, the power to create law and order, the power to
Govern rules.
deal with our enemies, whatever. But the other aspect of the Constitution, equally as important, is the amendments, which are to protect the people from their own government. To see that the government just doesn't come in, break in the middle your house in the middle of the night, search you without a proper warrant, etc., or to try you in some case without giving you a right to a jury, or all those things that are protected by the first 10 amendments, beginning with free speech, your right to speak out, say what you want to say. It's to keep the government from muzzling you, and so that you can criticize the government and you can stand up for your own rights and you can speak. And the First Amendment is both the greatest blessing that we've got in the Constitution and unfortunately also one of the worst aspects of the Constitution, because it permits the press to the First Amendment protects a lie just as much as it protects the truth. All right, now getting back to the 14th Amendment.
Okay.
So the first thing the 14th Amendment did was to incorporate the first 10 amendments and make them apply to the states, so that when the first 10 amendments were passed, it only protected the citizens against the federal government. The federal government couldn't do various things because it was restrained by the amendment. You got certain powers: the right to a lawyer, the right to a fair trial, the right to a jury, etc. Now, so those amendments were not necessarily in the state constitutions. Some had them, some didn't. But they then passed the 14th Amendment to say that these rights that you have to be protected against the federal government, also you have these rights to be protected against your own state government.
Okay.
You with me? So that's the first big thing in the 14th
So it was
Amendment.
a fail-safe, which is
And it
That's
came after
good.
the Civil War. It's one of the war amendments. That, and then the 15th Amendment, which gave the blacks the right to vote. And so the 14th Amendment is probably the most important aspect of the Constitution, because it gives you the right to what we call due process of law. It keeps the government from being able to mistreat you without putting you before a jury. You have to be properly charged. You have certain safeguards that are guaranteed by the 14th Amendment, which are crucial to the
It's combining the
preservation
federal and the state
of liberty.
at that point.
Yes.
So, because I always thought that was fascinating, how the states, just the ability to have the federal law be completely conflicted with state.
Right.
And the scary part is to have something that the federal law is saying, yes, this is okay, go, this is what we're agreeing to, and now the states individually can veto that and change it. And you know what, I got to be honest with you, with a lot of different people moving into the United States and not knowing our Constitution, not knowing our laws, and coming in with the idea of being proud from where they're coming from, but still being a United States citizen, it's imperative that you know the Constitution enough and the laws enough, so that when you're moving from another country or state, that you're not coming in and having officials elected, going through that in individual states, having officials elected, not knowing fully what our rights as Americans, and then changing, maybe each state changing into their own little nation.
100%. One of the inconceivable realities about America is that we don't teach the Constitution to children in school.
No, we don't.
To not only in high school, but we should start to teach them in the 6th grade. They should understand.
Well, I remember we memorized the preamble. I remember that.
Right.
But I mean, as far as, I vaguely remember things about it, but never ever sat and said, let's read it together.
Right.
No.
And then in high school, it should be intentionally taught, and then obviously so in college. And it's very strange. Vanderbilt's one of the best law schools in the United States. There's no question about that. But when I went to law school at Vanderbilt 50 years ago, they didn't even teach a course on constitutional law as it related to the state of Tennessee.
See, that's it. For me, it's almost frightening to think how easily something, your point exactly, John Jay. Read the Constitution, and you have to realize we need to change the things that don't apply.
That's right.
We need to, and women, I should have been, I love Susan B. Anthony, but if she had any point into changing the Constitution to read how it should read as persons instead of he, if somebody would have stepped up to say, and I'll hold the women accountable to this, ladies, come on now, you know that it doesn't read properly. Do something about it.
Right,
Don't demand. See, we're not, we love men.
Yeah, we're not men back.
But we love being women. So we would never bash a man for writing the Constitution because that's what the circumstances were. Now it's our responsibility. If we want it changed, then we need to pick up our bootstraps and say, this is what we need to do in order to change it, and not hate men.
And don't assume that the way it stands will be interpreted properly,
Right.
because we know that it's not.
Well, in fairness, we have had a lot of progress. We're nothing like as much as we need to have. But when I started practicing law 50 years ago, there were only 3 women who practiced law in Nashville, Tennessee. You think about that.
Wow.
Whereas today, if you go down to the courthouse, you'll see that there are more women who are sitting on the on the judgeships than men. And you go to the court, you'll see equally as many women practicing law as men. And that's a big step.
Don't go away. Here's what's coming up next week on Fire Pit Friday.
It won't be long till we have a woman president of the United States.
Well, I wanted
Before
to just...
we do, we ought to change this Constitution.
Yes.
So that
And so if you all want a little mission,
Yes.
we love missions.
go change the Constitution.
You know,
see your
John Jay,
Congress.
we need to take the responsibility.
Change it. Every man has a mother, and the mother's the boss.
You are quite the man.
I used to be JohnJayHooker.
You are so right. We do need to amend it, and we need to take
Definitely, get on
responsibility.
with it.
Yeah, people have been trying to shut you up in a big way,
Oh,
too.
definitely.
Trying to censor
Oh,
you
definitely.
and bring action against you, disbar you.
Yeah.
Boo-hoo.
Think of that. It's a free country.
know.
That's
Trying
not
to stand
right.
up for the Constitution.
Why are you so passionate about this?
I'm a friend to the Constitution.